Hey everybody, welcome back. It's evening time here outside of the saw shop. Today's video, let's get back to the basics. You're a homeowner, a firewood cutter, an acreage owner like me. You have one saw and a tree just fell over in your yard, or you got to do some trimming, and you go, I'm going to pull out my old trusty chainsaw, and your chainsaw has been sitting for 5-6 years. And what happens? You put her on start, you prime her a few times, and you do this. And so on and so forth. And you can't get the saw running. Today's video, I'm going to show you guys just some quick troubleshooting. Let's see if we can figure out what's wrong with this saw and if we can get it running. Okay, now this is a guy that my brother-in-law works with. This is his saw, and my brother-in-law mentioned that the guy has this saw and he can't get it to start anymore. It used to run, but it don't run anymore. So, before we get to wrenching on it, a couple things you want to do. First things first, does it have compression? Now, this is I don't even know what this saw is. It's a 42cc Craftsman chainsaw. This would be what your typical homeowner, you know, somebody with a cottage, a guy with an acreage, even a firewood cutter. This would be your typical saw. There's millions of these things out there. Okay, so this is probably a rebranded pull-in or something of that nature. First things first, does it have compression? Well, this is 42 cc's. It seems to thump okay. Now, these don't have a ton of compression or anything like that. Okay, so if you're pulling your saw over and it just goes thump, 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 you know, this thing, it doesn't hold itself by the pull cord, but it seems to have what I'll call adequate compression. Okay, so that's the first thing. If it feels like it's not making any compression, it's not thumping when you pull it over, pull your muffler off and look at the piston. Now, I'm not going to do that just yet. We may later on, but look at the piston. If it's scored up and looks horrible, stop right there. You're not going to get the saw running if the piston's completely shot. So that's number one. Number two, and this is 99% of the problem. You'll hear guys, they'll have a saw for sale. Yeah, it ran good when I last used it. It just vented all over my hand, so now my hand smells like gas. You'll see saws for sale, and it'll say, the cap came apart. It'll say, ran good when last used, needs a carb clean. Now friends, first things first, these carbs, yeah, sometimes they need to be cleaned, but 99% of the time, when someone says a carb needs cleaning, what they actually mean is you need new diaphragms, gaskets, and seals in the carb, okay? Ethanol gas, and gas in general, but most of the gas we all buy has ethanol in it now. Ethanol gas dries out rubber, okay? It makes it hard. These carburetors have rubber pumps in them, and when you pull it over, it goes pump, 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 pump. As the rubber gets dry, it gets stiff, and it doesn't pump anymore. Or the little orifices and holes in the carburetor get plugged with varnish or gunk, and those little jets don't move fuel anymore. Okay, so what I want you to do, you take your saw, stick your face down there. Now, does it smell like fresh, clean gas, or does it smell rancid? Now, we're in luck here. This gas doesn't smell rancid, but it smells old. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go environmentally friendly dump this. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, I dumped the gas out of this saw. The gas that came out looked green. It didn't look like healthy, fresh gas. There's still some in there. Okay. Next thing I want you to do, and I'm looking right now, I want you to look at the fuel line and see if there is a fuel line, left, and B, is it hard as a rock? Now I'm going to show you guys something here. I've already figured out 99% sure what's wrong with this saw, but I want you guys to see. Okay, I got the light on. You see that? That white thing? That appears to be a nipple. And there's nothing on it. Now, I don't see, let's get it to focus here. I don't see any other rubber fuel line in the tank. What I do see is what appears to be a fuel hose laying on the bottom. Let's see if we can dump that out. Okay, I dumped it out and here's what I found. This appears to be what was a fuel line right here. Now look. Okay, this is a rubber fuel line or a Tygon. Okay, it's turned into dust basically. So already this saw is probably not going to run. That's number one. Number two, there's no fuel filter in this tank. So I'm not sure, but I'm guessing this saw should have a fuel filter. I've never seen a chainsaw without them. Remember, friends, this isn't my saw. I've never worked on one of these. I mean, I've probably worked on the Poulin variant. But right there, this saw will not run. It doesn't have a fuel line. Now, to confirm this, let's take the top cover off. And I'm just using a scrunch. I don't think anybody's worked on this saw, so... take the top cover off. Okay. Right here. Now again, being a homeowner saw, it's clean, okay? This saw's super clean, hasn't been used a ton. It's got some kind of foam air filter in it. Now, what I'm looking for here is, where does the fuel line enter the fuel tank? We might have to investigate further. Let me grab some tools. We got to take this air cleaner off, and we want to look at the carburetor. Okay. Now, a lot of saws have this setup. This is primarily steel. Steel will have two 8mm nuts on two studs. Okay, loosen them off. If you're a homeowner, don't let this intimidate you. I know guys like me, we make it look easy. We all started somewhere, and now you have the internet. If you want to learn how to fix something, it's all there. Stuff like this I had to learn on my own back in the day, you know. So you can learn this stuff one thing at a time. The more stuff you work on, the more stuff you work on. I mean, I look at the things I've worked on in my life. It's, you name it, I've worked on it. Hydraulics, water pumps, diesel engines, gas engines, 2-stroke, 4-stroke, motorcycles, equipment. You know, the more stuff I work on, the more stuff I want to work on. Or I can work on, because it's just, you build off it. Okay, now, right now, what I'm looking at here is, there's a kill switch. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, we'll pull this off too. Okay, so there's a, oh, I got you. There's actually a throttle cable that goes through here. Now, I don't want to take that apart right now, but I may have to. I just want to see, where does the fuel line enter? And as, right here, friends, okay? Right here, here's the fuel line, and it's absolutely rotten. Right here, okay? I'll bring it up closer for you guys. Now, this is typical. I had a feeling I was going to find this. This is typical. What ends up happening is, you let your saw sit without fuel in it, and it actually rots the fuel lines. Now, with any luck, just looking at the throttle setup here, I don't think I'll be able to pull this carb off without taking the throttle apart. Now, we may be in luck. I'm going to go and look and see if I have any fuel line that size. Now, what I'm not sure, friends, is where and how does it go into the tank? Now, it looks like perhaps, I'm guessing it went through the tank and just straight into there. Just looking in the tank again. So, whatever, oh, I see. So, one of those lines went to the purge bulb right here. And the other line looks like the fuel line right here, or it could be an overflow. I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at right now, but it certainly appears that okay, so one end of that purge bulb goes to the carburetor, the other end goes to the fuel tank. Okay, and what I'm seeing right now is the one end of the line goes to the carb still, the other end was broken off. So this saw was not picking up any fuel, and that's why it's not running. Now, I'm going to pause you guys quick here. I'm going to go into the shop. I don't think I have this mini fuel line. As you guys know, I'm not a shop here. I just putter with things. I don't work on small saws like this. Therefore, I typically don't start, I don't collect parts for them. I collect fuel line and things like that for the things that I do work on. Now, I might have some of this. I got to go work or look in my stashes. Give me a second. Well, as I suspected, I don't have fuel line that size. Now, I could take the carb off, drill the hole in the tank bigger, run a standard 4mm, I think it is, Echo line. But you know what, friends? I'm not going to do that. I'll go to a local parts store and grab a couple of small pieces of this size line. I'll throw it in my truck and take care of it properly. Now, I wanted to show you guys this because I never looked at this saw before. 99.9% of the time, especially on these homeowner grade saws, they always have those rubber, they're not rubber, but they're a Tygon fuel line. Tygon's good stuff, but it doesn't like to sit submersed in gas for years. And what actually happens to Tygon is it gets hard and then it gets brittle and it falls apart. So if you do have a chainsaw and you don't use it very often, either use the fuel that you buy in the can, Aspen fuel is what it's called up here. Use that stuff. I think that has like a 5-year shelf life. Or when you're done using your saw, dump the fuel out. And leave it running until it runs dry, and then put it on the shelf. If you do that, I guarantee the next time you use your saw, you'll put gas in it, you'll pull it over, and it'll fire right up. If you leave it sitting with no fuel in it, or it'll never go bad. If you leave it full, like a lot of people do with regular gas, I guarantee if it sits for several years, you're going to have problems with your carburetor and your fuel lines. In this case, the fuel lines are rotted off. When I do get the fuel lines, we might as well go further. Let's open up the carb on this thing, because if the fuel lines are that bad, I bet you it needs a carb kit. We'll give this thing a carb kit, a new set of fuel lines, and a filter, and I guarantee it'll fire up. Anyhow, thanks for hanging out. I hope you guys got something out of this video, and stay tuned. We got lots more to come. We're going to finish the 026 build, and just keep on keeping on. Thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later. And since this is kind of a short video, we might as well throw in a question of the day. And I gotta say, this tan Wolf Creek hat that Ryan sent me, I'm liking it. I don't normally wear hats this color, but it looks good. Thanks, Ryan. Anyhow, today's question of the day, I read this email today from Greg Bailey. And Greg, you're an honest man. Most guys in your situation would not type an email that could potentially be read all over, you know, or seen all over the internet. But you, being such an honest man and a man who's struggling right now, I couldn't not help you and put this at the end of a video. So, Greg, thanks for sending your email. Greg sent me a fairly lengthy email discussing his trials and tribulations with an Echo. Sorry, friends. Mosquito. There we go. Greg sent an email discussing his trials and tribulations with an Echo 8010 backpack blower, which I gotta say, I've always wanted a backpack blower. I'm gonna have to buy one of these days. That looks like a handy tool for around the yard. But Greg got a Echo 8010 backpack blower. It needed a piston and cylinder. It was all scored up, he said. He ordered a replacement piston and cylinder, took the blower apart, cleaned it up, put the piston and cylinder on. Said he fired it up, it ran good. He ran it for an hour and no compression left. Wouldn't start, wouldn't run, pulled the muffler. It's got no compression again. Sorry, friends, another mosquito. So he then bought a second cylinder, put that one on, tried to run it again, breaking it in easy. It ran for about another hour and it stopped running again. And this is where Greg thought he may have a problem. So he tore into it further and found a bad bearing. So he said he ordered a bearing, another top end, and replaced it. And it ran good again for about an hour. And then it blew up again. So this is 3 blow-ups. Now, Greg, you are a tenacious man. I hope you've seen me struggle on the channel. I have had an Echo CS590 that I worked on that thing for 6 months before I finally just threw it in a box. But Greg then bought yet another top end. So I think he was on 4. Don't quote me, Greg. Sorry if it was only 3, but I think it was actually 4. He put it on and he said somebody told him to run 25-1 to break it in. That's why it's scoring. So he took their advice. He ran 25-1 Echo Armor, Red Armor, the good Echo oil. And he said it ran for half an hour maybe, and it blew up again. And he sent me an email today and said, Tin Man, can you help me, buddy? I am struggling here. So, Greg, thanks for being honest. I know it's hard. Believe me, Greg, I've had some doozies that I've really struggled with, and I put it on the channel, and, most people are understanding, but the odd guy will come in and say, you're supposed to be an expert, which I'm not. But if these things were easy to work on, everybody would do it, right? But anyways, Greg, so I'm going to say right now, Greg, and it sounded like you only replaced one bearing. I hope you did both of them. But Greg, I would bet $1 million that you either have a fueling issue, you have a lean issue. Without pictures of it, but I guarantee your backpack blower is leaning out and it's seizing. Now, usually the reason why it's doing that is you have an air leak. And this is for anybody. When you buy a blown up piece of equipment, you guys see me do it all the time on the channel. What happens when I get an old saw that's scored up or blown up? What do? I tear it completely down and I put new bearings, new crank seals, new gaskets, new fuel line, filter, carb kit, intake boot, piston and cylinder. And they 99% of the time, they're perfect then. Now, the reason why I do that, Greg, is I usually suspect an air leak. And rather than trying to track down an air leak, I'm already going to put a top end on it. I might as well split it and redo it. So, Greg, I would say you either have a crank seal leak, an impulse leak, a bad carb kit, a bad intake boot. So what I would do is, before you buy another piston and cylinder for that thing, because you're in it to win it now, I know you want to get that thing running, get yourself a Mighty Vac. They're about $100. Probably if you're in the States, maybe they're $65-$70. Make yourself some block off plates and do a pressure and vac test. A pressure test will put like 5 pounds of pressure in the cases. You got your intake blocked off and your exhaust, and you pressurize the case, spray it with soapy water, or if you don't mind, dump the whole engine in a bucket full of soapy water and look for bubbles. If you see bubbles, there's your leak. And then vacuum test. Well, often crank seals can leak under vacuum. When the piston's going up, the case is under vacuum. That's what pulls air and fuel through your carburetor. So what you want to do, Greg, is you want to check to see if maybe your crank seals are leaking under vacuum. That one's a little bit harder, but if it doesn't hold vacuum, A lot of times it is the crank seals, but it could be the intake, it could be the impulse. Check your fuel lines, make sure you got a good fuel filter. But Greg, 99% of the time, a blown up, especially like something like a backpack blower, unless it was run, unless it was lean seized or it's seized because it was straight gassed, 99% of the time, a seized two stroke. If it's a chainsaw, it could be seized because of a dull chain, but more often than not, two strokes seize because they have an air leak. And when you get an air leak, it leans out the mixture, therefore it gets hot, and boom, pop goes the weasel. Now, I will say something. I don't do the great oil debate, but um, modern oils, 50 to 1, 45 to 1 is fine. Um, you don't need more oil to break in a saw. I'll put a drop or two extra in the tank because it makes me feel good. Does it do anything? No, I don't notice a difference. I've built countless saws on this channel. I used to put a bunch of extra oil in the gas tank when I first started, and now I just run my regular fuel and I run the saw and they're fine. That to me, that's a total myth. You don't need to put extra oil. Make sure if you rebuilt the bottom end, make sure it's clean, and put a little bit of lube on your bearings, and put a little lube on your piston when you assemble it, and you're good to go. And if you didn't do that, put the kill switch off, pull the thing over 5 or 6 times, and get some fuel and oil running through there, and then start it up, and it'll be fine. So honestly, Greg, it's a great learning experience, and I'm glad you took the time to email, and thanks for being so honest, because every time I have a saw that doesn't run, I learn more than the 10 saws in between that run perfectly. I learn more from my mistakes and my failures than I do from things that go well. Anyhow, Greg, I hope that helps. Send me another email, buddy, if you have any more questions or comments, but hopefully that helps. But I'm 99% sure you probably have an air leak on that backpack blower. Anyhow, everybody, I'll pick up some fuel lines for that little Craftsman and see if I can get that thing running again. And store your equipment dry if you can, and you won't have any problems with it. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. I'll see you guys in a couple days. Later.